our next guest is someone completely different.
And now for something completely different.
I'm teasing this on Facebook for quite a bit, and we have another author. This one, not one of your standard Star Wars authors, but a current one who actually has 3 books coming out in 2015.
Really?
And just had 3 books come out this past year. We have ʻdɛʃər, who is a playwright and an author here in the United States, who works with Quirk Books, who did Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, Pride and Prejudice Zombies. And he's written 3 Star Wars books this past year, also known as the Star Wars Shakespeare books.
Whoa, wait, that was him?
That was him.
Dude, I gotta hear this.
And he has joined me for a nice little interview. Are you happy with that one, Bruce?
I think he said all he needed to say.
And he's joining this nice little interview, which I do apologize for one little bit. This interview was supposed to happen like 2 weeks ago, but it didn't because I forgot about daylight savings time. So he being in Scotland, it kind of threw off my groove. And so we did it again, but I did it after staying up late till like 2 in the morning, and it was really early in the morning I had to do the interview, so I'm kind of tired, so it takes a little bit to warm up, but some great stuff here, and this is definitely a truly unique Star Wars book. If you haven't read the Star Wars Shakespeare books, what they do essentially is take the script for Star Wars and turn it into an iambic pentameter and make it as if it's a Shakespeare play. So you know those plays that you have read in high school, don't lie, you read them in high school, and I know you loved them.
Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo?
So, and they turned Star Wars into those type of plays, and now he's working on the prequels. But of course, you'll hear all of that in his interview with ʻdɛʃər. Is it okay if I call you Ian?
Absolutely.
What gave you the idea to do Star Wars and Shakespeare together? Because that's not usually something that the two audiences are not usually combined.
You know, there were a handful of things that happened to me a few years ago. I watched the Star Wars trilogy with some good friends of mine, and then not too long after that, I read Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, which is one of these first mashup books. And then right after I finished that book, went down to the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. I live in Portland, Oregon. Went there with my family, and we saw some Shakespeare. And so I think it was sort of a mix of having Star Wars and mashups and Shakespeare bouncing around in my head. And I was at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival when I had the idea to write the book.
Because, you know, Shakespeare is in all the iambic pentameter and, you know, the special way they talk, and, you know, your books are definitely embrace that fully. Was it hard to change a script of such a well-known movie or something I'm assuming you knew so well into iambic pentameter?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it definitely takes a while to get used to writing in iambic pentameter because it's, you know, there's a lot of tapping out syllables on your fingers to make sure that you've got the stresses in the right place and got the right number of syllables and all of that. And so it is something, though, it sort of becomes like a muscle, so the more you do it, the easier it becomes. So these days it's a lot easier for me to write iambic pentameter than it was when I was starting off. So yeah, I mean, there were definitely some challenges, you know, and I also learned a lot about Elizabethan vocabulary and, you know, when you use certain words and certain verb endings and things like that, and when you don't.
So what did Lucasfilm think when you wanted to make Star Wars Shakespeare?
I sent it to Quirk Books first, knowing that they had done Pride and Prejudice and Zombies and a few other mashups, and they liked it, and so they sent the first. I'd done basically the first act, and I'd remained pretty close to the story, not adding in a lot of my own stuff at that point. And so Quirk liked it, and they sent it on to Lucasfilm. Lucasfilm wrote back and said, "Well, we like what he's done so far, but we want to see if he can go ahead and have some more fun with it. Go ahead and take it outside the bounds of the movie, play around with the characters some, kind of make it his own." And so that was great for me because what Star Wars fan wouldn't want to, you know, get to throw in jokes and play around more with what the characters are doing and thinking. And so I went back and revised the first couple of scenes. And so that's, you know, we have R2-D2 and C-3PO on the Rebel ship, and I have R2-D2 turn to the audience and speak in English, and have stormtroopers talking about, you know, sharing drinks at Mos Eisley with Darth Vader and things like that. So, and after that, we sent those revised scenes back to Lucasfilm, and that was when they said, "Okay, we're ready to license this."
I see. So they were okay with it. How long did it take you to write? Since you said it got easier over time, how long did it take you to write the very first one?
The first one took me about 4 months, working in the evenings, you know, after my kids are asleep.
And I'm assuming what you did is you took the script for the film, which is well, readily, or did you have to watch the readily available and then you worked with it there, or did you have to watch the movie over and over and over and to suffer through that?
I sort of did a mix. I would have the DVD in my computer and sort of watch a few seconds to remind myself of what the exact lines were, and then I'd pop over to the script online if I needed to find out things like I don't know the names of every single minor character and all of the place names, and there were some lines that I just never understood. There's that line in the final trench battle. Did it hit? Nope, it didn't go in. It just in blah 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 blah. Like I never understood what that line was in all of my years of watching Star Wars. It just impacted on the surface, is what he's saying there, and the script will tell you things like that.
Ah. So 4 months for the first one, and then I've noticed that after that you've Empire Striketh Back and so on, and they've been coming out faster. How fast? How easy it is working on Phantom Menace? I think you're doing right now, right?
Yeah, we're working on the prequels right now, so that's a lot of fun. So
are they coming faster?
They are coming faster. Empire and Return of the Jedi, those two I wrote basically in about half the time that I'd written the first one. So both of those together were written in about 4 months, whereas I'd taken 4 months total for the first one. So and then these next, these next three are being written basically at the same pace as Empire and Jedi. So basically one every couple months. So it's busy right now. I'm actually right near the end of Attack of the Clones right now, and those will all come out next year.
Is the difference in the way they talk in prequels versus the originals making it easier or harder to change it into this speak? Well,
the dialogue in the prequels is not as wonderful as it is in the first movies. So there are some lines, there are a handful of lines in the prequels that I think all of us kind of cringe at. When Anakin says, "Are you an angel?" To Padme, it's like, okay, yeah, we're laying it on a little thick here. So I don't know that it was necessarily any harder. I think there were just there's just been a lot of opportunities with the prequels to visit the dialogue and say, okay, how are we going to put this into a Shakespearean context and hopefully, make it something that's going to flow a little better.
Okay, so we have a couple listener questions. Here, the first one is, who was the most challenging character to write as a Shakespeare character in the original trilogy?
I don't know that there was one character who was most challenging. I mean, there were things that just because of the nature of doing it were difficult, like putting like transcribing and transliterating foreign languages into iambic pentameter. So making sure that when Jabba the Hutt speaks, his Huttese is in iambic pentameter. I mean, that's tricky because you're dealing with these sort of Lucasfilm has all these official transliterations of their languages, which is fun because you, as the author, you get to see those, but it also then is a little bit difficult to make sure those are going into iambic pentameter. And then it was fun sort of exploring what to do with other characters. But I things like making Yoda speak in haiku, having Boba Fett speak in prose and things like that. But I don't know that any one was particularly more difficult than another.
Okay. So why don't we share with listeners a little bit about your background in writing? What led you to be able to write these stories?
I've loved Shakespeare since the beginning of high school. I had very good high school English teachers, and they sort of instilled in me a love of Shakespeare. And it was around the same time, the summer after my sophomore year was when Kenneth Branagh came out with his Much Ado About Nothing movie, which I saw a ton of times and really loved, and so it was a really good time to be a young person sort of getting interested in Shakespeare. And so over the years, I think it was my senior year of high school, we had our first assignment where we actually had to write some iambic pentameter. And over the years, because I'm that kind of nerd, I've written different sonnets and things like that for various occasions. I've written, probably countless adaptations of 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, which is another, it's not iambic pentameter, but it's another thing where you're dealing with verse and rhyme and that sort of thing. So I'd had, sort of a lot of practice at doing this for fun over the years. And so sitting down to write, 2 hours worth of a movie and changing that into a play is certainly a bigger task. But it was sort of more of what I had done for fun throughout my life.
So you're one of the people that thought Shakespeare is fun.
Yeah, I was that geek. I was that one in high school when we had to, memorize the speech in Macbeth where Macbeth is considering whether or not to kill Duncan. When the day we had to recite it, I of course brought like a fake sword to school so I could volunteer to go first, of course, and then do the speech with my fake sword. Yeah, that was me. I was that guy.
And then everyone else feels like crap. Why did I do this first?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so which are your favorite Shakespeare plays?
I really love Hamlet, partially because I know it probably best of any Shakespeare play. I really love The Tempest. I think I've seen The Tempest live more times than I have any other of the shows. I really love Much Ado because of the movie. I am really fond of A Midsummer Night's Dream, Henry V, really the Henry IV parts 1 and 2, and Henry V, that whole 3-play cycle. Really, I enjoy Othello. I've always wanted to play Iago in Othello. I thought that would be really fun, whatever that says about my personality. And enjoy a lot of the tragedies, Macbeth, King Lear. I mean, such wonderful characters there. So yeah, that's sort of I probably just named a third of his plays, but that's I really enjoy a lot of them.
Okay, here's another listener question then. They said Star Wars, of course, has its own fan base, its own huge thing of opportunities which has been opened up. But Shakespeare, well, has its own, literary fan base. How has writing these 3 and soon to be 4, 5, and 6 novels, how have they opened doors for you?
Well, it's been interesting. I mean, first of all, I'm always a big fan of the Star Wars movies, but was not nearly as big of a Star Wars fan as many of the people I've met since doing these books, right? I mean, I knew very little, honestly, about the extended universe. I mean, I knew that it was out there, and certainly, like when Timothy Zahn first came out with the continuations of the story, I knew that those were out there and existed and everything, but didn't know quite how big that world was until I sort of dove into it. And first of all, have just learned that Star Wars fans are some of the nicest people in the world. And it's really been wonderful because, by and large, I mean, there are always going to be critics, right? But by and large, I've been really embraced by the Star Wars community, and that's been really wonderful. On the Shakespeare side, it's not so much Shakespeare scholars or things like that I'm hearing from, but it's theater people who like these, have read the books and sort of imagine how this could end up being on stage. And that's, Lucasfilm at this point. Lucasfilm owns the copyrights for the books, and at this point they're saying no to any public performances. But still, it's been really fun for me. I have a theater background. I used to do theater a lot in high school and college, and so it's been really fun for me to sort of get back into that world a little bit by hearing from theater people and things like that, and getting to occasionally act out scenes when I'm doing readings and things like that.
Have any of the hardcore Star Wars fans tried asking you the question, does this book count as EU now that they've erased it? Is it canon?
Nobody has asked me that yet. So it is funny, though, to hear about the sort of the debates about the EU, now that Lucasfilm made the decision that they made, or Disney probably really made that decision. What's been funnier is I mean, like I said, the sort of critics on the Star Wars side are the ones who are saying, like, who read the very first book, which was based on A New Hope, and are like, well, why are there scenes with Jabba the Hutt in this book? Why is this based on the 1997 re-release instead of the 1977 original release? And I get why they're upset by that. I mean, I totally do. And yet it's kind of funny because I have to, I mean, Lucasfilm is still approving these books. And so they are still the ones who I work with to get the books, to get the manuscripts approved and all of that. And so it's been a funny line to walk sort of between the fans. The whole whether or not Greedo or Han Solo shot first. That was one of those moments where I knew I was sort of treading on thin ice when I was writing that scene, and those moments, more than particular characters, are sort of become the difficult parts of writing, when you're dealing with somebody or a scene that has become famous in some way. I mean, so Jar Jar Binks, right? The whole issue of Jar Jar Binks, the whole issue of Padme and Anakin's romance, which some people feel was very unconvincing in the movies, sort of becomes this hot button issue that you'd better do it right, or else there'll be hell to pay.
So how do you turn Jar Jar into iambic pentameter? What do you just have this weird voice running through your head whenever you wrote his dialogue?
I mean, I did a couple of things with Jar Jar that I won't reveal yet, but I did a couple of things with his character to try to both set him apart because he is this sort of almost a buffoon in some ways, right? And also to sort of explain him a little bit. So we'll see whether or not people find it convincing, but it was actually really fun. Way more fun than I thought it was going to be, getting into Jar Jar and sort of doing something fun with him, which you almost have to do, right? I mean, if you're going to do the prequels, you have to figure out what you're going to do with Jar Jar. And before I wrote them, the suggestions ranged from make his speech like absolutely perfectly eloquent, make him the smartest character on stage, from that all the way down the spectrum to kill him off in the very first scene of the very first book, and just leave him out after that. So it's you have to do something because it's something that people are going to be looking for. What did he do with Jar Jar?
I guess we'll have to wait and find out. It's kind of funny that you mentioned how people were angry about like the Jabba the Hutt scene in A New Hope and other stuff, when a lot of those scenes from the special editions were in the original script and were he filmed them. Like I remember there's cut scenes of Jabba the Hutt being this big human guy in furs, right? That was filmed with the original trilogy that he cut out because he wasn't satisfied with it. So I don't understand why the hardcore fans would be so angry about putting scenes that were there originally that they just couldn't make work.
Yeah, I mean that's a really great point, right? It's not like George Lucas. Well, that's not true. I started to say it's not like George Lucas put in things that were totally not in the original movie. He did do that. I mean, there are certainly shots outside the cantina and things like that are not in the original at all. But yeah, I mean, scenes like the Jabba scene and the scene where Luke is talking with Biggs right before the Death Star battle fight, right? I mean, those scenes, yeah, were all filmed originally, and so yeah, that is sort of funny. In fact, the whole Biggs thing, I never got in the end of the movie when Biggs dies. I never understood. I never knew that was Biggs. Like, you don't know that that's Biggs unless you just somehow know, right? So I never knew that was Biggs until the movies were re-released, and I was like, oh, that's why it's this big moment when Biggs dies, because Luke's just lost his childhood friend. That makes so much more sense now.
Yeah, I started with the radio dramas, and so radio dramas have that whole there's a sequence on Tatooine at the very beginning which was all cut. It's on the Blu-ray, but where Biggs comes back and tells me he's joined the rebellion, and they see the Star Destroyer battle against the Tantive 4 in the atmosphere above, and you get to meet Luke's friends at Tashi Station and so on, or Anchorhead.
Well, see, that's fascinating. There's where my knowledge, is lacking, right? Because
it's if you see the Blu-ray, it's on the Blu-ray. It's one of the deleted scenes, but it's like 15-20 minutes, and on the radio drama where there's 13, 20-minute episodes with a lot more breathing time, they could put that back in there, and so you have a lot more background on Biggs. But of course, in the movie, you don't have that many hours to tell a story usually.
Yeah, interesting.
And unless you're Peter Jackson, and then you have as many hours as you want.
Right.
Okay, let's go to another fan question. Okay, was there any random or small background character that either you knew of before, or that when you were reading for your research for this, that you suddenly fell in love with, that you just had to put a bigger role in your books?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was fun to. I mean, so many of those smaller characters. You know, I always sort of liked or wondered about as a kid, and or in watching the movies again for these books. So like the Ugnaughts, who are the little pig-like characters on Cloud City, they become this sort of roving band of singing elves, basically, in the book, where I took their sort of random squeals from the movie and turned them into this. They almost are like the Seven Dwarves in some way. So that was fun to do. I gave speaking lines in Empire to a couple of the creatures. So the Wampa gets a couple of speeches, and the space slug that tries to eat the Millennium Falcon as it flies out of the asteroid gets a really pathetic speech, because its dinner has just flown out of its stomach, and so it was really fun to do things like that. And of course the one that I think I sort of enjoyed the most and was kind of really looking forward to before I got there was the Rancor Keeper. Right, we get this wonderful little moment in Return of the Jedi when after the Rancor dies and the Rancor Keeper comes out and sees this monster who clearly he has loved, and he weeps on the shoulder of his friend. And so, in Shakespeare, of course, that it would never just happen like that silently. He'd have to have a soliloquy about it. So it was really fun to sort of get into his head and sort of and make up a backstory to how he, first acquired the Rancor and raised the Rancor and all of that. So that was really great fun.
Okay. Another fan one is, were you influenced at all by any of the comedy specials like Robot Chicken or the Family Guy ones with some of your scenes? He mentioned, he referenced the Space Slug scene, how Robot Chicken did, not necessarily the exact same thing, but a similar sort of thing where they gave him a voice, or sort of a pathetic voice at the end.
Yeah, I have seen the Robot Chicken Star Wars and love them. I think they're hilarious. And the Space Slug, I suppose it's possible that I was in some ways, influenced by that. I was definitely influenced by, in Robot Chicken Star Wars, you have a scene between Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker. It's just after Obi-Wan Kenobi has died, and it starts off with the scene kind of from the movie where Luke is sitting there in the Millennium Falcon as they're flying away, looking sad. And Princess Leia comes up behind him and basically says, like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Is the man you hardly knew, did the man you hardly knew just die? Well, I'm too busy thinking about the millions of people I loved on Alderaan who just got destroyed," right? And there's this very funny moment because of course in the movie, like, we're all sitting there, like, feeling bad for Luke, and yet, like, of course, Princess Leia would be feeling this terrible, terrible agony. And so of course, I didn't have her mocking him because that wouldn't really be like her character. However, I did.
Lucasfilm wouldn't like that.
Right, exactly. But I did have them, the two of them, sort of doing this exchange back and forth where he's talking about his grief for this one person, and she, meanwhile, is talking about her grief for this whole planet of people whom she's just lost. So that was definitely inspired by Robot Chicken.
How much support or aid could Lucasfilm give you for a project like this? Because I know with a lot of the novels and a lot of the database books, they give all sorts of holocron materials and all sorts of, advice and revisions and so on. With a project like this, how much help did they and could they actually give?
Like I said, they gave me the transliterations of foreign languages, and I probably could have asked for more than than I did ask for. Leland Chi, who is the sort of keeper of the holocron, he does review the manuscripts, which is really fun because, and in fact, there's sort of something in the prequels with Jar Jar Binks where when I got the manuscript back from Lucasfilm, I could see a note from the main person I work with at Lucasfilm, Jennifer Heddle, where she's basically asking Leland in her note, is this okay, by the sort of official story guidelines, and he, commented right after that, yes, this is great. So that was fun, and I could have, since I'm dealing with the movies themselves, it's not as much like the extended universe where I'm, creating new material or new stories. There is one thing I did in Empire that got cut. I wrote the sort of missing scene between Boba Fett and Lando Calrissian, right, where Boba would arrive at Cloud City before Han and the others and convince Lando that he has to betray Han. I did write out that scene, and Lucasfilm didn't let me have it. So, which is, you know, they and their line there was, it's too close to canon. So that was, you know, for me as a Star Wars fan, just fascinating, right? And it's always been a joy working with Lucasfilm. It's never felt like, you know, I mean, certainly there are things that I wish they'd let me keep, but on the whole, like, it's just been so much fun working with them, because it's fascinating to see, again, as a Star Wars fan, how well they know their universe and how well they protect it and all of that.
So was it your idea to continue on to the prequels, or did Lucasfilm say, why are you stopping now? Continue, just do more.
You know, it was always sort of a discussion with my publisher about whether or not we'd want to do the prequels. And actually, I did not think we'd ever do them. I didn't have a particular desire to do them or anything like that. But then what happened is that as I did more and more readings, I would have not only, you know, adult fans coming up to me and asking me if I was going to do the prequels and clearly excited about that prospect, but also lots and lots of kids. I mean, basically anybody who's, you know, 12 or younger who comes to a reading will come up to me and ask me if I'm going to do the prequels, which is just, you know, sort of confirmation, if ever I needed it, that the prequels are Star Wars for this younger generation, right? So those are the movies that they really look to and love more than the original trilogy. As much as that may pain those of us who are older who grew up with the original trilogy, it's true. And so I started to see that excitement and realized, wow, you know, there really are a lot of people out there who, I mean, for as many people as there are who don't like the prequels and will not be excited about these books, there are also a lot of people who will be really excited about them, and many who will even be more excited about them than they are about the original trilogy.
I think the thing for me that gets me most excited is when I picked them up, knowing the movies as well as I do, the most exciting thing for me is spotting either the differences or how you adapt certain scenes into Shakespeare, because I have a lot of these films memorized, and so I can just pick it up and go, oh, that's clever, that's fun. Like, I remember reading the first one and the way you put in the chorus, which is a very Shakespeare thing, but the way you fit it into Star Wars worked brilliantly, actually.
Well, thank you. I mean, and that's, I mean, sort of my hope. I mean, obviously I just want these books to be enjoyed, but I hope people enjoy them because in some ways they are sort of adding new depth to some of the characters who we know and love so well, right? You know, and you sort of get to, you know, when R2-D2 speaks, I mean, we all know from the movies that he is snarky and noble, right? But you get to actually sort of hear that expressed, or you get to hear what might be going in through Lando's head when he's betraying Han, or any of those other characters who are thinking things. It was really fun for me to sort of, you know, like I said, get inside their heads and think about what was going on for them, which is also a very Shakespearean thing, you know, having characters explain their motivations for things.
So you said how Lucasfilm has told other people they cannot perform these plays. Do you think Lucasfilm themselves may ever allow it to be put on, like, say, at Star Wars weekends at Disney World or something like that?
I mean, anything is possible. I haven't heard of any plans to do that. My feeling is they probably have bigger fish to fry right now with the new movies coming and all that.
Movies,
sort of right?
Who cares now? Movies, games,
exactly.
Books.
Yeah. So you know, I don't. And Lucasfilm has never. I mean, Disney's a very different beast, right? Disney certainly has experience doing theater. Lucasfilm really doesn't have any sort of theater division or anything like that. So, you know, this is just sort of not something that's in their realm of experience. So I don't know. It could be something that ends up happening at some point. I certainly hope so. I think it would be really fun to see, you know, all or some of it performed.
That's when you see Star Wars Disney's Star Wars Shakespeare on Ice.
Yeah, exactly. The musical. Yeah.
Featuring characters from Frozen. That would make That would make Star Wars fans' heads just really hurt and
that's
want
right.
to go away. So, we're gonna wrapping this up, but before we do, what can you tell us about the creation of these covers? Because these fit Shakespeare really well, but you instantly get a Star Wars vibe on them. Who was the artist, and how do you know anything about the creation of the covers of your different books?
Yeah, so the publisher found the artist, whose name is Nicolas Delort. He's a French-Canadian illustrator. He lives in Paris, and they were looking for somebody who could sort of do a woodcut style, sort of like you might imagine would exist in Shakespeare's time. And so for every book, they've sort of decided, okay, who needs to be on the cover? Lucasfilm, of course, needs to approve the covers and then all of the illustrations and that sort of thing. And Nicholas has just done an amazing job. I mean, that's part of certainly, the Darth Vader cover for the first one, the Yoda cover, the Jabba cover. I mean, these are covers that people see them in a bookstore and it instantly sort of draws you into that book. And then hopefully you pick it up and look through it and say, okay, this is actually, done okay. Right. But the cover really helps sell the book. And I always say, I mean, I love all of Nicholas's drawings. The one that just killed me when I saw it is Admiral Akbar in the Jedi Doth Return, who just looks like this, sort of 1850s British naval commander, and it's hilarious. And so I love the work he's done. I love that what his illustrations do is help you imagine how these might actually end up on stage, looking like if they were on stage. So it's been really fun for me to see those come to life, and I've been really happy with what Nicholas has done.
I suppose you can't spoil what's going to be on the cover of Phantom Menace. I'm assuming my guess would either be Anakin or Jar Jar, but if I see Jar Jar with like a top hat and a monocle, I'd just laugh really hard and probably buy it quicker.
I did suggest Jar Jar for the Phantom Menace because I did think there would be sort of a lot of funny things you could do with him, but that is not where we're ending up. But But you're right, I can't say.
Because the Akbar one was perfect.
Yeah, really well done. And so many other things, when he's illustrating battle scenes, and he'll, put ships on marionettes and things like that. So you sort of really get the sense of how it would look like on a stage. It's just really fun.
Okay, so we usually at the very end of our interviews we let the guest have the soapbox so they can promote their website, their appearances, anything that's upcoming. So we're going to give you the soapbox so you can promote whatever you'd like to the fans right now.
Well, I will say that the box set, the William Shakespeare Star Wars box set of the original trilogy, just came out in the end of October, and it's a great gift for the holidays for that Star Wars fan you know and love. And as we've been talking about, the prequels are all due out in 2015, so those will be hopefully fun and something to look forward to.
Okay, and the box set and everything, it's available. I have my version on Kindle. It's available everywhere, right, with audiobook and ebook and...
Yep, that's right. They're certainly all available through Amazon and Barnes & Noble and things like that, and should be at your local bookseller and things like that. You can look for information on quirkbooks.com or my site, which is iandescher.com.
So I guess one last question before, since you said you were influenced by Pride and Prejudice Zombies and the mashup books, have you ever wanted to do a book with the author Pride and Prejudice Zombies and Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, and what's the other one he did?
I don't remember what I know he did another one, and I think it was another one.
It's Graham Smith.
That's Graham Smith. Yep, is his name. And that's funny. I have not thought of doing a book with him. He's actually... he has not done a book with Quirk, I think, for a while. And so I have gotten to know some of the Quirk authors who in general are just really fun people. But I have not gotten to know him. I have sort of, dreamed up, other mashups that really, I mean, many mashups are sort of more fun in the just conception of them than anything else, right? Like Herman Melville's Titanic and things like that, right? They're just sort of, you smile and you laugh when you hear them mentioned, but that's sort of where they end. So whether or not I will tackle another mashup, we'll see.
That's what you should write, The Muppets Take Coruscant.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun.